Hello and welcome. Tonight's story begins with sirens screaming through a distant research station as a deadly alien storm closes in. 4 explorers on the living planet Xenon 7 will face a crisis no training prepared them for, an accident, an impossible change, and a fight not just to survive, but to decide who they become when escape is no longer an option. Settle in and listen closely. Sirens tore through Vanguard 1 like metal, screaming in pain. Ethan Cole didn't think. He moved. His gloved hands locked around the half-fried survey drone, boots slamming against the docking ramp as the outer hatch yawned open behind him. The sky over Xenon 7 burned electric blue, lightning crawling sideways through clouds that weren't clouds at all, but living vapor reacting to the geomagnetic surge. Static clawed across his visor. Radiation counters spiked red. He lunged inside just as the storm front hit, a shockwave shuddering through the station hull. The airlock door sealed with a bone-deep thud, cutting off the howl of charged wind and airborne spores that glittered like toxic snow. Inside, lights flickered. Gravity trembled. His breath rasped loud in his helmet. Too fast. First minute on the surface and the planet had already tried to kill them. And it wasn't even angry yet. The tremor rolled through Vanguard 1 long after the outer storm passed. A deep vibration that didn't match any mechanical pattern. Ethan felt it through his boots, through the deck, like a pulse from something vast beneath the soil, inside the operations module. Lyra stood rigid, eyes unfocused, her breathing shallow. The thinking clouds were active, too active. Signals flooded her mind faster than translation systems could filter. Seren's skin brightened in uneven waves, light responding to unseen frequencies outside the hull. Mira scanned the environmental feeds, frowning as toxin levels in the air shifted in rhythmic cycles. Not random drift. The planet wasn't reacting like terrain. It was coordinating. External cams showed crystal fields humming, flora bending in synchronized arcs, airborne spores moving in organized currents. Xenon 7 wasn't weather, geology, or biology alone. It behaved like a single organism. And Vanguard 1 sat inside its bloodstream. Vanguard 1 had never been meant to feel small. But against Xenon 7, it seemed like a fragile tin lung clinging to the edge of something immeasurably vast. Ethan sealed the drone into decon, while Mira rerouted power from a non-essential lab to stabilize life support. Oxygen margins dropped 2%, enough to matter. This mission was supposed to map biosystems, not outpace them. Lyra monitored cloud activity, jaw tight, as Seren calibrated crystal harvest nodes for emergency energy. Every tool aboard now had one purpose: keep air flowing, keep hull intact, keep bodies alive. Earth Command was 22 light minutes away, too far to save them if the planet turned hostile. Xenon 7 offered data. Yes, but only on its terms. Study required exposure. Exposure meant risk. Risk meant survival first. Science second. Out here. Research wasn't discovery. It was negotiation with a world that didn't need them and might erase them without ever knowing they existed. The surface hatch opened with a hiss that sounded too loud in the stillness. Ethan stepped down first, boots sinking half an inch into soil that yielded like damp muscle rather than dirt. The ground was warm, not sun-warmed, alive warm. Seren followed, her suit lights dim compared to the faint bioluminescent threads pulsing beneath the terrain. Lyra paused at the threshold, helmet tilted, listening to something none of them could hear. Mira scanned the air. voice tight as toxin readouts flickered between safe and uncertain. Ahead, crystal spires rose in crooked clusters, each emitting a low harmonic tone that vibrated through Ethan's ribs. Wind moved across the plain, carrying shimmering blue motes that drifted in slow spirals, almost beautiful, almost harmless. His suit filters hummed harder. Every step felt like walking deeper into a body that hadn't decided whether to accept or reject the foreign cells moving through it. Ethan crouched beside a cluster of low, fan-shaped plants, their surfaces rippling with faint blue light, as if something moved beneath the skin. He leaned closer, angling the sampler arm. A sharp tone chirped inside his helmet, brief, easy to dismiss. Then a second alert flashed red across his visor. Seal integrity. Micro breach. For half a breath, he froze. Wind shifted, carrying a shimmer of blue dust straight into his faceplate. Filters spun up, but not fast enough. The warning vanished as quickly as it came. Systems auto-correcting. "You good?" Mira asked over comms. "Yeah," he answered, throat already tingling. He cleared it, focusing on the task, logging plant data with steady hands. The moment passed, buried under procedure and the need to keep moving. Behind him, spores settled into the suit seams like fine powder. Unnoticed. Patient. Back inside Vanguard 1, the air smelled faintly metallic, filters working harder than usual after surface re-entry. Ethan stood in the decon chamber as jets blasted his suit with ionized mist. Readouts flashed green. Clearance granted. He unsealed the helmet, drawing in recycled station air with a tired sigh. The tickle in his throat returned. Sharper this time. He turned away, lifting an arm. But the sneeze tore out of him anyway. Violent. Uncontrolled. A fine cloud of blue particles burst into the overhead light, glittering like microscopic stars before drifting into circulation vents. "Bless you," Seren called lightly from across the module, unaware. Ethan wiped his nose, embarrassed. Already moving to log sample data. Behind the walls, air processors hummed, pulling the station's shared breath through filters never designed for something alive enough to wait. The first sign wasn't pain, it was clarity. Ethan woke in the dim crew quarters before the station lights cycled on, eyes already adjusted to darkness as if someone had turned up the contrast of the world. He could see the faint glow of circuit panels through the wall seams, the slow drift of condensation along the air ducts. His skin felt tight, not sore, just denser. When he flexed his fingers, the gloves rasped faintly against a surface that seemed less soft than it had been. In the lab, Mira paused over a blood scan, brows drawing together as unfamiliar proteins threaded through familiar human markers. Seren's glow pulsed in uneven rhythms, syncing with external flora signals she couldn't hear, but clearly felt. Lyra rubbed her temples, whispering that background mental noise had grown louder, layered with patterns she didn't recognize. No one said the word mutation. They didn't need to. Something had started. Quiet and irreversible. Mira called them to the med module without raising her voice, which made it worse. Data scrolled across the holoscreen. In clean, undeniable lines, hormone spikes, cellular division patterns, gestational markers where none should exist. Seren stood rigid, glow flickering in staccato bursts. Lyra didn't speak at all. Her hands trembled as if she were holding a signal too loud to bear. Ethan stared at the numbers, trying to force them into any other meaning. There wasn't one. 3 separate confirmations. 3 different bodies. The same impossible result. No contact, no known vector, except the spores. The room felt smaller, air heavier, life support fans suddenly too loud. Outside. Xenon 7's crystal fields hummed like distant chanting. Inside. A silence settled that wasn't shock anymore, but realization. The mission had changed without asking them, and there was no protocol for what they had just become. No one reached for the comm console. The panel glowed softly at the far wall, a direct line to Earth command, to protocol, to containment procedures none of them had signed up to become subjects of. Mira folded her arms, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the medical display, as if numbers might change if she stared hard enough. Seren's glow had dimmed to a steady, low burn, energy conserved, emotions locked down. Lyra finally spoke, voice thin but steady, saying that if command knew, the mission would end, and so might their autonomy. Quarantine, extraction, study, not rescue. Ethan felt every gaze turn toward him, not because he was leader, but because the spores had entered through him. Responsibility settled like extra gravity. He nodded once. Slow. "We keep this internal," he said. "We survive first. We figure this out ourselves." No one argued. Silence became agreement, and the station felt smaller than ever. Ethan noticed the difference during a routine exterior check. The cold didn't bite the way it used to. Radiation readings hovered in the caution zone, yet his skin prickled only faintly beneath the suit lining, as if an unseen layer absorbed the edge of it. Back inside, he ran diagnostics on himself in secret. Heart rate steady, oxygen uptake improved, reaction time faster by measurable fractions. When a tool slipped from a high rack, his hand snapped out and caught it before he consciously processed the fall. In the corridor lights, his skin carried a subtle sheen, smoother, tougher under his fingertips. It wasn't sickness, it was adjustment. Across the station, Seren's glow pulsed in new patterns. Lyra's focus drifted toward distant mental currents, and Mira's toxin tolerance readings climbed beyond human norms. None of them spoke about it directly, but the truth was clear. Xenon 7 wasn't infecting them. It was rewriting them to belong. Lyra stood at the observation deck, palms resting lightly against the transparent alloy, as mist from the thinking clouds drifted below like a slow ocean. Her breathing matched their motion without conscious effort. Each inhale timed with the shifting currents outside. Signals moved through her mind in layered pulses. Curiosity. Caution. Something like recognition. Seren worked in the exterior greenhouse module, her bioluminescence brightening in direct response to nearby plant growth, light trading back and forth like conversation. Mira knelt beside a contaminated water sample that cleared, molecule by molecule, as her gloved hands hovered above it. Ethan watched from the corridor, sensing patterns rather than seeing them. Temperature gradients, electrical fluctuations, chemical traces in the air. They weren't studying Xenon 7 anymore. They were syncing with it. Nervous systems slowly aligning with a planetary rhythm that didn't belong to Earth at all. Routines shifted without discussion. Meals were timed around Mira's nutrient needs. Power cycles adjusted to Seren's energy fluctuations. Quiet hours carved out when Lyra's mind strained under the constant planetary signal. Ethan found himself moving between them instinctively, checking seals, recalibrating filters, fixing small failures before they became threats. Eye contact lasted longer. Hands brushed during equipment handoffs and lingered a second too long. Not from romance first, but from the reassurance of another warm body in a place that wanted them gone. Arguments died quickly, survival overriding pride. Sleep schedules overlapped. No one wanted to be alone during night cycles when Xenon 7's distant hum rose through the hull like breathing. They had come as specialists with separate disciplines. Now they functioned like a single organism, 4 minds. One fragile system. Every decision weighted by the lives growing quietly inside the station's thin metal shell. Research shifted from exploration to necessity. Ethan rerouted power from long-term survey arrays into shield reinforcement, using resonance patterns from the singing crystals to stabilize voltage spikes. The storm cycles kept triggering. Seren worked beside him, her glow brightening as crystal frequencies matched her own bioluminescent rhythms, turning raw alien energy into usable current. In the hydro lab, Mira altered nutrient synthesis protocols, blending trace compounds from Xenon 7's flora into life support systems, watching toxin levels drop where Earth chemistry had failed. Lyra mapped the movement of thinking clouds, predicting spore surges hours before sensors could detect them. Every experiment had one metric now. Did it keep air breathable, water clean, systems running? Failure meant suffocation, contamination, or blackout. Success bought time, another rotation alive inside a world that could erase them with a shift in chemistry or mood. Science had become survival, and survival demanded precision without hesitation. Ethan woke to a sensation that wasn't sound or touch, but pressure behind the eyes, a faint pulse that didn't match his heartbeat. He lay still, breathing slow, and the signal came again, soft, scattered, like distant static resolving into pattern. He followed it down the corridor to the med module, where Lyra slept upright in a chair, fingers resting over her abdomen. The pulse strengthened near her, then echoed, separate but similar, from Seren's quarters and Mira's lab cot. 3 sources. Not pain, awareness. He closed his eyes and let his senses widen the way they had been changing, filtering the station's hum until only those subtle rhythms remained. They felt curious, unformed, reaching, not parasites, not noise, minds, barely begun, brushing against his own. A surge of fear mixed with something heavier, responsibility. Whatever Xenon 7 had made, it had tied them to him, and the connection ran deeper than biology or mission protocol. External feeds dimmed one by one as the sky over Xenon 7 shifted from pale haze to a deep electric blue. Charged particles crawled across the horizon like veins lighting under skin. Ethan watched the geomagnetic data spike beyond predicted ranges. Storm vectors twisting in unnatural spirals that matched Lyra's reports of rising mental turbulence in the thinking clouds. Seren's glow fluctuated, light responding to the planet's growing agitation, while Mira's toxin monitors showed sudden atmospheric shifts as spores lifted in dense waves. The air processors groaned, cycling faster, straining to keep contamination out. Every surface sensor agreed on one thing. This wasn't a normal storm. It was systemic, planetary. A surge moving through Xenon 7's biosphere the way adrenaline floods a body under threat. Vanguard 1 sat directly in its path, a fragile bubble of metal and breath waiting for impact. The first system to drop was lighting. Half the corridor panels blinked out, plunging sections of Vanguard 1 into dim emergency red. Ethan felt the vibration before he heard it, a low grinding hum as external shielding strained under electromagnetic assault. Consoles spat error codes faster than Mira could clear them. Oxygen synthesis dipped 3% in under a minute. Carbon scrubbers lagging as power rerouted automatically. Seren's glow became the brightest source in the room, shadows jerking across walls with each flicker of failing circuits. Lyra gripped the console edge, jaw tight, whispering that the thinking clouds outside were in chaos, signals colliding like static storms inside her mind. Ethan moved from panel to panel, hand steady even as the deck trembled, manually isolating circuits to prevent a cascade failure. Outside, lightning arced horizontally across the sky, striking ground in silent blue spears that made the hull ring like a struck bell. The storm had found them. Lyra was the first to fold, fingers digging into the console edge as a sharp breath tore from her lungs. Ethan caught her before she hit the deck, feeling the tremor running through her body wasn't from the storm. Seren staggered back against the wall moments later, bioluminescent patterns flashing erratically across her skin, light pulsing in sync with something internal, rhythmic and unstoppable. Mira didn't cry out at all. She simply went still, one hand pressing low against her abdomen as the med scanner at her side lit up with rapid hormonal spikes. 3 signals, simultaneous. The realization struck harder than the hull vibrations. "It's starting," Lyra whispered, voice thin but certain. Outside, lightning tore across the sky. Inside, life support alarms blared in counterpoint to the ancient. Biological timing none of them could delay. The storm had come, and so had the births. Ethan stood in the corridor junction, storm alarms wailing, 3 different medical alerts flashing across his visor. Evac protocols flickered in the system menu. Launch the emergency pod. Preserve 1 life. Maybe 2 if he pushed the mass limits. It was the procedure drilled into him since training. Minimize loss. Ensure survival of at least 1 crew member. He looked toward the escape hatch, then toward Lyra struggling to breathe, Seren glowing in erratic pulses, Mira steady but pale with focus. The faint mental rhythms he'd felt earlier brushed his awareness again. Small but present. Leaving meant life. Staying meant risk beyond calculation. But it also meant choice. Who he was under pressure. He shut down the evac sequence with 1 firm command. "We hold here," he said, voice low but unshaking. The station wasn't a research asset anymore. It was a cradle, and he wasn't abandoning it. Ethan guided Lyra down the dim corridor toward the upper observation dome. Boots slipping slightly on the vibrating deck as lightning flashes turned the world outside into frozen frames of electric white. The thinking clouds had gathered there, drawn close to the station's hull like a living storm front. Mist pressing against the transparent alloy in slow, deliberate currents. Lyra's breath came in tight pulls, her mind flooded with signals Ethan couldn't hear but felt echoing through the air like pressure changes before thunder. He helped her lower to the floor, sealing auxiliary panels to reduce electromagnetic bleed. The chamber filled with a soft, luminous fog as the clouds thickened outside. Light refracting in pale silver waves. Lyra's eyes closed, pain threading through her voice. Yet beneath it ran something else. Recognition. The planet wasn't just watching, it was present, surrounding them as if answering a call older than language. Seren braced herself against the arch of the crystal chamber as harmonic tones rolled through the air, each note vibrating in her bones like distant thunder shaped into music. The singing crystals had activated under the storm's electromagnetic pressure, facets glowing in layered colors that shifted with every surge outside. Her bioluminescence answered, light rippling across her skin in matching frequencies. Body and crystal locked in resonance. Ethan secured the energy dampers along the chamber wall, hands moving fast but careful, stabilizing the power draw so the crystal field wouldn't overload and shatter. The floor pulsed with soft blue light, heat rising through his boots. Seren's breathing fell into rhythm with the tones, contractions synchronized with the crystal chorus. Outside, lightning carved the sky apart. Inside, sound and light wove together, turning pain into pattern, turning the chamber into more than shelter, into a living conduit for birth. Mira stepped into the purification basin as alarms echoed through the hydro module, water glowing faintly where her hands broke the surface. The pool's filtration microbes, tuned earlier for toxin processing, flared into active patterns, threads of light spiraling outward like living circuitry. Ethan sealed the pressure hatch behind them, locking out electromagnetic interference as best he could. The storm made the overhead pipes shudder, droplets shaking loose in silver rain. Mira lowered herself slowly, breath controlled, eyes fixed on the ceiling while contractions rippled through her body. The water responded, currents forming gentle loops around her, temperature stabilizing with uncanny precision. Sensors showed toxin levels dropping to near zero, as if the basin itself recognized the need. Ethan knelt at the edge, one hand submerged, feeling the subtle energy coursing through the liquid. In this chamber of water and light, life and environment moved together, inseparable, deliberate. Ethan moved through Vanguard 1 like a current through wire. Senses stretched beyond normal limits as the storm hammered the hull. Radiation spikes crawled across his visor, yet his skin barely tingled beneath the suit lining. The thin, hardened layer absorbing what would have burned him days ago. He rerouted power manually, bypassing fried relays. Hands steady, despite the deck trembling under each electromagnetic strike. In the observation dome, he sealed auxiliary shutters between lightning pulses, timing movement to the rhythm of the storm. In the crystal chamber, he adjusted dampers so energy flowed without rupture. In the hydro module, he reinforced grounding lines, ensuring stray charges bled harmlessly into the water systems. Every motion had one goal: keep fields stable, keep air breathable, keep life intact. Outside, Xenon 7 raged like a living nerve firing in pain. Inside, Ethan stood between that fury and the fragile line where survival still held. Lyra's cry merged with the low hum of the clouds, sound bending as mist thickened inside the dome, wrapping her in silver currents that pulsed with her breathing. Ethan held her hand, feeling two heartbeats through the contact, hers, and the smaller rhythm beneath it, when the child came. It did not scream. Its eyes opened, unfocused yet alert, and the mist responded, eddies tightening as if in greeting. Across the station, Seren's chamber flared white gold as crystal tones peaked. Her bioluminescence burst outward in a wave that rattled the dampers. The newborn there wailed once, a note that harmonized with the crystal chorus. In the hydro module, Mira surfaced with a gasp, water swirling clear and bright. The infant cradled against her chest as if lifted by the pool itself. 3 births, 3 environments. One storm outside, life emerging not in defiance of Xenon 7, but in step with it. The change came like a breath finally released. Lightning that had clawed across the sky in relentless sheets, thinned to scattered pulses, then to distant flickers beyond the horizon. The constant vibration in the hull eased, metal settling with soft, ticking sounds as stress loads dropped. Inside Vanguard 1, alarms fell silent one by one, replaced by the low, steady hum of stabilized systems. Ethan leaned against the bulkhead outside the dome, chest rising hard, listening to the newborn sounds filtering through the station. Small breaths, a faint cry, Lyra's exhausted whisper. External sensors showed spore density dispersing, crystal fields dimming to their natural glow, thinking clouds drifting into slower, deliberate formations. Xenon 7 wasn't calm exactly. It felt recovered, as if a fever had broken. The storm had tested every seal, every circuit, every choice they had made. The station still stood, lights steady, air breathable, and for the first time since arrival, the planet's silence didn't feel like a threat, but an uneasy truce. Dawn on Xenon 7 arrived without sunlight, only a gradual brightening of the sky's deep cobalt haze. Inside Vanguard 1, the damage revealed itself in quiet ways. Hairline fractures along corridor panels, insulation peeled back from overloaded conduits, one habitat module sealed permanently after pressure loss. Ethan moved slowly through the station, tablet in hand, logging repairs while listening to the softer sounds behind sealed doors. 3 separate breathing patterns. Steady. Alive. Seren rested in the crystal chamber, glow reduced to a gentle pulse. Lyra slept beneath the observation dome, mist drifting thin around her. Mira remained in the hydro module, water calm as glass. Oxygen levels were stable, reserves lower but manageable. The storm had taken systems, time, certainty. It hadn't taken them. For now. Survival meant maintenance, patch, seal, recalibrate. Because on Xenon 7, peace was only the space between catastrophes. And they all knew another test would come. Ethan stood in the observation dome, looking down at the cloud banks moving in slow, deliberate spirals, and understood something that had nothing to do with data. The children had not survived despite Xenon 7. They had survived because of it. Lyra's infant stirred, eyes tracking faint movements in the mist with impossible focus. In the crystal chamber, Seren's newborn glowed softly, light syncing with distant harmonic pulses. Mira's child rested calm in the hydro module, breathing steady in air that still carried trace alien compounds. These weren't accidents of biology. They were continuations of the planet's own systems. Vanguard 1 was no longer an outpost studying an ecosystem. It was part of that ecosystem now. A node in a living network that had absorbed them instead of rejecting them. Ethan felt the truth settle heavy and clear. They hadn't just survived contact. They had crossed a line there was no stepping back from. They gathered in the central module, with tools still in hand, fatigue etched into every movement. But no one spoke of evacuation. The screens showed damage reports, resource curves, spore migration paths. Ethan drew a new layout over the station schematic, expanding hydro systems toward natural water channels, integrating crystal arrays as stable power nodes instead of temporary boosts. Mira outlined water purification loops that worked with Xenon 7 biology rather than against it. Seren proposed external growth zones where flora could shield structures. Lyra added cloud-safe corridors, regions the thinking clouds avoided disturbing. This wasn't a repair plan. It was settlement design. They mapped food cycles, air exchange, radiation shielding grown from living materials. Protocols shifted from mission timelines to generational sustainability. No signal to Earth carried this decision. It lived only in shared understanding. They would build here, not as visitors, but as part of the system that had rewritten them. The sky shifted through shades no Earth sunset had ever held. Deep cobalt melting into violet and pale silver as Xenon 7's twin moons rose in opposite arcs. Ethan stood outside the station's reinforced airlock without a helmet for the first time. Filtered air cool against skin that no longer reacted with fear. Behind him, Vanguard 1 hummed softly, no longer an outpost, but the first structure of something lasting. Seren stepped beside him, her glow gentle, child cradled close. Lyra emerged next, the infant in her arms quiet, eyes tracking the slow movement of the clouds. Mira followed, water droplets still clinging to her sleeves, her newborn breathing in steady, even rhythms. The air carried faint crystal tones and distant spore currents. Not hostile, just present. This wasn't victory. It was acceptance. They watched the light fade, knowing survival had not returned them to who they were. It had made them something new under an alien sky. The comm array blinked steadily behind Ethan, a silent reminder that Earth still existed somewhere beyond the static haze of distance. He could send a full report now. Data, births, transformations, the proof of a new branch of life. Protocol demanded it. Rescue might even come, wrapped in quarantine orders and containment procedures. He looked at the station, at the reinforced structures merging with living growth, at the slow pulse of crystal energy threading through their systems. Lyra stood with her child beneath drifting cloud shadows. Seren's glow blended with nearby flora. Mira knelt at the water channel, testing purity by touch alone. The children breathed air that had never passed through Earth's sky. Returning would mean separation, study, confinement. Staying meant uncertainty, but choice. Ethan powered down the transmission console. The path home had not vanished. It had simply stopped belonging to them. Night settled over Xenon, 7 in layered shades of indigo and silver, the twin moons casting long, soft-edged shadows across the newly reinforced structures of Vanguard 1. From a distance, the station no longer looked like a foreign object dropped onto hostile ground. Bioluminescent vines traced along its outer supports. Crystal nodes pulsed with steady light, and water channels curved around its base like living arteries. Ethan stood at the edge of the platform, the faint hum of the planet moving through the soles of his boots, a rhythm he no longer mistook for machinery. Behind him, 3 quiet breaths and 3 smaller ones blended into a fragile, shared future. The sky above shimmered with drifting spores, no longer warning, just presence. Survival had stripped them down, forced choice after choice, until only truth remained. They had not conquered this world. They had changed enough to belong, and paid for it with the people they used to be. What began as a mission of discovery became a test of humanity itself. Survival demanded sacrifice, choice, and the courage to change. On Xenon 7, they learned that living isn't only about breathing. It's about what you protect and who you choose to be when everything familiar is gone. If this journey moved you, stay with us and join the next story waiting beyond the stars.